What's up guys, Shawnthebro here, and in today's episode of the Fighting Game tutorial series, we are going to be going over improving our progress bars, pause menu, and versus screen. So I'm going to come into my game here, and the first thing I really care about is making it so our progress bars aren't moving when the game is paused. So previously, you could see the health bars fill up, and if you paused it during that point, they would keep filling up, which I think just makes it look a little bit sloppy. It's not really a problem. Doesn't affect gameplay, but it's just something I didn't really like too much. And also the same as for if you're dealing damage and you paused it. So see here, if I hit the opponent and I pause it, the health bar stops decreasing, and then when I unpause it, it finishes. So we're all good to go there. Makes that a lot nicer. You can see with the super meters too, if we use our cheat to fill our super meters and we pause it while they're filling up, that will occur. Additionally, if we pause the game, we have some things like mouse support and hover and press actually displaying the proper image for the pause menu, which is always good because otherwise it looks really ugly, and every time I was pausing it was showing up with this white box or default button appearance, which isn't really what we want. The versus end pop-up did the same thing, so if I go ahead and win my fight here, you'll see I do my little animation, this menu pops up. If I hover over it with a mouse instead of using my keyboard and controller, I get that same effect. That's what we're going to be covering today. If you want to get caught up in the series before watching this episode, I'll link you to the entire fighting game tutorial series right here in the top right corner. You can see how we've done everything from our hitboxes to our different characters and much more. If you only care about the upgrades to these modules, the progress bars, the pause menu, and some of the behavior for the versus end pop-up, that way you can get started with that. So this is a code and blueprint tutorial series, but we're going to be doing everything in the blueprints today because we don't need to touch the code. We're just going to be modifying our widgets, which are all in blueprint. The first one we want to go to is our base game mode HUD. For me, this is in my blueprints, widgets, HUD, base game mode HUD. And this is where I have a ton of stuff for my actual HUD. This is where all 4 of my progress bars are being displayed. We have player health for player 1 and player 2, and then we have the super meter for player 1 and player 2. Now if we go into the graph, we have quite a bit of logic in here. Where we want to go is our tick function. Our tick function is what was filling up the progress bars over time. And basically we were just getting the game mode reference, grabbing the current health bar percent, the overall health, and then the progress bar fill speed to determine the correct percent at the current time. This was happening for player 1 and player 2. So when the game is paused, we set a variable that exists within Unreal Engine, not one that we created, called isGamePaused. When we set that boolean, it knows to set the actor's time dilation to 0 if they're affected by that. However, the widget itself can and will continue to tick, and so this tick function will continue to update the progress bars. We want to stop that. There's a very simple way we can do it. We just need to add 2 nodes. At the start of event tick in our HUD here, we can check is game paused. Again, this is not a function that we created in the series. This is an Unreal function just to determine if the game is paused using Unreal's pause system. And then we can bring that result into a branch. Now, only if the result is false, the game is not paused, do we want to do this behavior. So you can see up above, I have is game paused. If it's false, then do all this progress bar behavior. If it's true, we just don't do anything. We don't need to fill it up or modify the progress bars in any way. We have 1 for player 1 health, 1 for player 1 super meter, 1 for player 2 health, and 1 for player 2 super meter. So this is all 4 of our progress bars on our HUD, and now they will function properly when the game is paused. Some other small improvements I want to do include the versus pause menu. So if I go back here to my widgets, go to my menus, we have our versus pause menu. When I pause the game, I have this menu pop up. And throughout the series, we've implemented keyboard and controller controls for all of our menus. Something I started doing recently is mouse controls. And when we do mouse controls, a lot of our buttons will not function as expected. And what I mean by that is if we come over here, say we go into versus, for example, we're on our character select screen. If I hover over these characters, they just turn into this white box, which really isn't what I want. This is the same for buttons on the character select screen. See how they turn into the regular gray Unreal button? I want them to turn into my hovered button, like we have for our other buttons, like for example on our main menu. And I want this to happen for the pause menu as well. And I also want the associated hover and press sounds for hovering with the mouse and clicking with the mouse that we have for using the keyboard and controller. So while we're dealing with pause logic, I figured let's go ahead and update the pause menu to reflect this behavior as well. First things first, when we're in our pause menu, we can go into the graph and we can go to this function, display hovered selection. So display hovered selection is one we set up where we grab all the buttons that are on the pause menu and we determine if they are the currently selected one by the player. But what we want to do now is also check for mouse input. Now, the mouse input kind of works right away as soon as you assign it in Unreal. We don't have to do anything special for it. The problem is with how we were assigning the style using our custom navigation system. We were looping through all the buttons in this array, checking against the button that we're passing in, and we were getting the style of the button, or rather setting the style of the button, like this, appearance set style, and we were splitting the struct pin. Then we were going to the style normal, splitting the struct pin, and we were setting the default values for this style. Mainly the image. I was using button var 1, which is an unselected, unhovered, unpressed button. That's the image I was using. This works for all of our cases except if the mouse is hovered or pressing, because then it's going to trigger the style hovered here. So if I actually bring this back, you'll see style hovered does not have the image selected in here. So when I split this struct pin, now it has the style hovered image and it's blank. So it's going to default to Unreal's default button image. And same with the style pressed as well. If I split the struct pin, it also does that. You see style pressed image and there's nothing in there. So it's going to default to Unreal's default button. We don't really want that. At this point, we want to assign those buttons. So I'm going to go over to this one, my top one here. This set style is if the button we're passing into this function is not the selected button, meaning we are resetting its value to our default button. So that's button var 1 for the style normal image. For my hovered image, after splitting the style hovered, we want to choose our hover variant. So I have button p1 hover var 1. I can leave everything else the same for it. And then for the pressed, after splitting the style pressed, we want to make sure we use our selected image. Button P1 selected. And now my mouse inputs will work. They will hover and they will press on the menu the same that the keyboard and controller inputs did. For the false, this means this is the hovered button, or the current selection by the player. So the one that they've selected with the controller or gamepad, but we want to do the same behavior here because if we have that selection made and the mouse is navigating the menu, we still want to display the proper icons. So we were using button P1 selected for the normal image. For the hovered image, we want to use button P1 hover var, which is the same one we used up above. And for the pressed image, we want to use our BTN P1 selected, which again is the same one we used above. Now, additionally to this, I've added another nice thing, which is the press sound and the hovered sound. So if I am to get that set style node back one more time, here in set style, split the struct pin, there is a style press sound and style hovered sound down at the bottom here. We want to assign these as well, because when we call move selection, this is when we're moving with a keyboard or controller, we were playing the tick sound effect. So, when we are hovering over it with the mouse, style hovered sound, we split this struct pin, we can pass in the tick sound effect. When we call confirm selection, this is confirming it on a keyboard or controller, we were calling confirm 1. So if we split the style press sound, we can use confirm 1. And you'll see that's what we've done in each of these. Tick and confirm for my style hovered and style pressed, and tick and confirm for my style hovered and style pressed. So both of my set styles now have all the information they need to fill out the proper image and sound effects for that button when the mouse is navigating the menu. We want to do the same thing for the versus end pop-up while we're here. I know it's not directly related to the pause menu, but the versus pause menu and the versus end pop-up are very similar in their behavior. And so I figured we might as well add it here instead of waiting for another episode. So we can go into our versus end pop-up, which is right here for me. We can go into the graph, go back to display hovered selection, and do the same thing. We go to our set style. We're using button var1 for our style normal image. We want to split style hovered and pass in our button P1 hover var1, which is the same hovered image that we use for all of our other buttons. And we want to split style pressed and use button P1 selected. Then I've also added the styled hovered sound and styled pressed sound by splitting them and passing in the proper sounds, tick, and confirm 1. That was the style for unselected buttons. Now we go to the style for selected buttons with the keyboard and controller. The normal image is button P1 selected. That's what it was in previous episodes in the series, but now we are splitting the styled hovered to get the button P1 hover var1 image, style pressed to get the button P1 selected image, and style hovered sound and style press sound to put in tick and confirm 1. So there you go, guys. That's how we can improve our pause menu, our progress bars, and our versus end pop-up. Just make them a lot nicer, conform to the rest of the series, and give us some quality of life enhancements. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and consider joining the Patreon, YouTube membership, or Discord subscriptions, like a lot of you already have. Thank you so much for the love and support. You can check out the benefits that you'll get from that up here in the top right corner. If you had any issues with this tutorial or ran into any trouble while trying to follow along, you can join the Discord community. There's a link in the description, and that support is completely free. That's all I got, so thank you so much for watching. I'm Shawnthebro, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, guys.